Look, and I am genuinely sorry that we seem to begin each week with the recitation of this COVID chaos. I don't apologise knowing that Australia-wide only two things are guaranteed: confusion and fear. I want to assure you that in the face of plenty of attacks on me for what I'm saying, I take seriously my responsibility to get as close to the truth as I can for you. And as I said at the outset of this 18 months ago, we have to disable the alarmism. Today, Monday, is Freedom Day in Britain. The last of Britain's restrictions will be lifted. But on the eve of Freedom Day, they had 261,000 new cases, 3,933 patients admitted to hospital, 257 deaths. Transpose those statistics here, an island continent, and it would mean nearly 90,000 weekly cases, more than 1,300 hospital admissions. The absurdity is obvious. London and New York have opened up, and despite most New Yorkers being vaccinated, infection rates are rising. Vaccination doesn't prevent you from being infected, but we do say get vaccinated because it will limit the effect of the infection. So Britain runs up more than 590,000 positive tests in 3 weeks, and they open up 590,000. We clock up 1,000 and shut down half the nation and bury all of Australia in panic and fear, all in the name of health and well-being, without ever conceding the damage done by lockdowns to personal health. Think of young people, think of suicide, domestic violence, drinking, anxiety, depression, to say nothing of the financial cost, billions, while decision makers, fools personified, talk about a zero-case strategy. Consider this. If the in these scare conferences at the weekend, we learnt that approximately 225,000 tests had been conducted. 314 were positive, 0.13%. What does each test cost? Or why don't they tell us? My colleague, the economist Adam Crichton, says $200. So that was $44 million for the weekend. And so far, you'd be staggered to learn there have been 7.9 million tests. That's another 1.5 billion. Where the hell is this money coming from as Chant and co call for more tests, more tests? And of those who tested positive, why aren't we told how old they are? Why aren't we told their comorbidities? Why aren't we told how many are obese? In 2017, there were 1,255 deaths from influenza in Australia in 1 year. 1,255. Not an eyelid was batted. In 18 months, we've had 914 deaths from coronavirus. The World Health figures today tell us 99.4% of all cases in the world are mild. 99% of all cases in Australia are mild. There are 18 serious. We've got 116 people in hospital. But I thought that was what hospitals were for. But we've got unqualified bureaucrats ruining people's lives, and they're on full pay. And the Tragicallys of this world will try to tell you they've saved thousands from being infected. How many lives have they ruined? Do you have a word, Gladys, for the hard-working people in Fairfield who can't put food on the table? When are you, Daniel Andrews and Gladys Berejiklian, going to take a pay cut to live on the $600 a week or less that others are being asked to now accept? You wouldn't mind if a few truths were told, but Big Pharma, Big Government, Big Tech are all in this together. And if you don't say what they approve, they'll come after you. And yet, questions are never answered. Of those testing positive, I ask again, how old are they? What are their comorbidities? How many are obese? Why are fully vaccinated people locked up? Why don't you tell us the World Health figures that 99.4% of cases around the world today are mild? But government in Australia boasts one triumph. Yep, they've had one big victory. Their scaremongering has worked. Tragically, our nation is terrified. Half of them locked up in their own homes, not because of a tiny number of COVID cases, but because of the alarmism of moronic officialdom who've got no other way of dealing with the issue. And tragically, Australians cop it because fear has won over truth. People think they're at the risk of death, even though over 99% of the cases are mild. So there are people listening to me tonight who may not wake up tomorrow, but their family, their grandchildren, can't visit them. Maddie Newton is a nurse in Melbourne, fully vaccinated. She's 26. Her father was killed in a car crash in Townsville on Friday. Her brother is in hospital. Maddie applied for a quarantine exemption to visit her family enveloped in tragedy. It was rejected. Scott Morrison, if this can happen under your government, stop telling us you are the Prime Minister. Children are being scared out of their wits, And good Australians who only want to get their hands dirty earning a quid are treated as would-be criminals. But the instructions keep coming, get tested. So hundreds of thousands queue for hours to be tested for a virus they don't have. Ordered into the queues by politicians and bureaucrats on ridiculous salaries paid by those who've been put out of work. What did Gladys Berejiklian say in May? I fear for Victoria and I worry about what their government may do. We've demonstrated to other states that it is possible to manage an outbreak and not shut down a city. Gladys, you've joined the Daniel Andrews camp. Didn't you also say on Saturday?
No matter where you live in Greater Metropolitan Sydney, you should have a mask with you. Even if you're just exercising with your household, you might change your mind to pick up a coffee or pick up something or be in an outdoor market. You have to wear a mask in those settings.
I can barely listen to such rubbish. Even though she hasn't produced one sentence of epidemiological evidence to justify wearing a mask, but as you most probably have already seen, here is the picture of the Premier. She's not staying at home. It's not the fact that she's without a mask, but rather she's telling everyone to stay at home.
Stay at home.
Stay at home. Stay at home.
Do not leave your home. Do not leave your home. Do not leave your home. Do not leave your home. Do not leave your home. Do not leave your...
No, she's buying a coffee, which can be made at home. Is that essential shopping, is it? We've got police fining and terrorising people. One rule for the others, another rule for the Premier. For one reason, no one knows the bloody rules. She was asked last week if the disaster payments were available to people who voluntarily decided not to go to work. Yes, she said, that's the whole point of it. Well, it was, until Canberra then said, no, people are only eligible for the COVID-19 disaster payment if they're unable to attend work due to impacts resulting from the lockdown restrictions. Wrong again. The New South Wales government had to concede that payments are available only to people unable to work rather than for people who choose not to. But then no one in the government can define essential work. As one of my very bright viewers wrote, and I quote, thank God we live in New South Wales, where we've got the gold standard in COVID management. Imagine how bad things would be if, for example, people were allowed to disembark from a cruise ship full of COVID-infected passengers, or a limo driver ferrying infected flight crew from the airport to quarantine without safety protocols in place. Writes Paul, it seems here in Fairfield we're about to cop the Andrews solution with even tighter restrictions. Paul writes, I promise, if that happens, I will put all my energy into campaigning against this mob of ignorant, arrogant imbeciles. Now, pardon the language, but Paul ends by saying, Liberals my arse, we need a fresh broom. How do I answer people like Val in Victoria, whose son, quote, is exhibiting severe mental strain? She says to me, I'm scared at the way he may do something stupid. He's required to provide a negative COVID test to his employer before returning to work on Monday, but the local GP has advised him they won't test anyone who isn't showing symptoms. He has no symptoms, but is being treated as if he's infectious. It is beyond mental abuse, Val says. He's now sitting at a second testing site for 2 hours already, as his closest testing site had hundreds of cars lined up with a 6 to 8 hour wait. Writes Val, what kind of incompetent service are these bloated, overpaid grubs in power running in Victoria? She said, I worry for my kids every day. I thank you for your good work. Well, Val, that's what we're here to fight for, against the bloated, overpaid grubs in power. I now note real concern that aged care workers are going to be forced into vaccination. I'm not opposed to vaccination. I've had a jab and I'm waiting for the next. What I've been trying to explain to you are the pros and cons of these vaccines. You're entitled to the facts. But these people in government punish us for not sticking to the rules. Well, the Australian Immunisation Handbook has some rules. Quote, vaccines must be given voluntarily in the absence of undue pressure, coercion and manipulation. So how can aged care workers be forced into vaccination? I've had an email from a very eminent Australian research scientist in Germany who recently visited. Having listened to chief medical officers and their so-called advice, he said, Alan, who on earth are these purported chief medical officers advising government? Nobody around the world's ever heard of them. They've not done research and assessed the research of colleagues. They've not published papers. They've not attended international conferences. Says this eminent research scientist, quote, what sort of fools would listen to these non-event type of people? Well, if we are to disarm the fear and achieve a turning in the road out of this, let me make 10 simple points. 1, there is a virus. 2, it won't go away any more than the flu virus goes away. 3, you vaccinate or you don't vaccinate. There are 2 reasons people aren't vaccinating. One reason is if you're fully vaccinated, you're still locked down. And if you're fully vaccinated, you can't catch the virus. But we're not told that. Fully vaccinated, you're not likely to get sick. Unvaccinated is a personal choice. You must be entitled to that. My 7th point is the current virus is Delta, very transmissible, much weaker. We're not told that. 8, government must stop alarming people. The Delta virus is a weaker strain. 9, if you want people to vaccinate, don't give them free air tickets or free beer, give them freedom. And 10, any strategy must be such that the cure is not worse than the disease. At the moment, we're running up billions of dollars of debt, crushing business, terrifying school children, increasing suicide rates, not telling the truth that there is international scholarship opposing lockdowns and masks. Put all the cards on the table, give hope and urge personal responsibility. I make one final plea. Tell everyone not to be afraid. There were 224,000 tests at the weekend in Sydney. 314 were positive, 0.13%. But a better statistic, 99.87% were negative. Get these politicians out of our lives and let us get on with ours via personal responsibility. What do you think? Alan at skynews.com.au or the text line 0414 000 848.